John Beatty. Scott Bowling.
No one told me what I'm supposed to do, so I'm just standing here. Yeah. Lemon face, sour face.
Swamp ass.
That's some good company.
I love you. We gotta do another one.
Oh, okay. That's the thing you did. Now the worst part's when we don't get the crack open at the same time.
We're gonna better get it on the same time.
I'm John Beatty of the BREWtally Speaking podcast.
I'm Scott Bowling.
And we are having some good company over some drinks.
Oh, yes.
Keep it metal.
Hey guys, my name's Scott Bowling, and I'm with John Beatty from BREWtally Speaking podcast. Or what did Nathan call it? He called it BREWtally Speaking. Yeah.
I have the tallies of how brutal I get. It's like, some veterans, have the ears that they keep around their necklaces. I just keep like a tally of brutals.
That's lovely. John's awesome, man. He's the first guy on the show to bring like beer. And especially this White Claw, man.
Yeah, we make that back in Grand Rapids.
Do you?
Really? No, we don't.
Oh, yeah, okay. I don't know if you came up with the Title Claw or was it Thunder Claw. Anyway, sorry, man.
Very good.
BREWtally Speaking, man. I love the logo, first of all. And I didn't know your show was that old. I went on your podcast. I was like 2016 or something.
Yeah.
And it was untitled too, right?
Yeah, so I wasted the good name. Like in that scene in Big Daddy, like when the Jon Stewart comes in, they're like, surprise.
Oh, we wasted a good surprise on you.
Yeah, we wasted a good surprise on you. So I wasted the good name on the first podcast I had with three of my friends. We called it Two Drunk Dicks.
That was the name?
Yes. I still have all the episodes. I've thought about releasing it as a sub podcast like everyone does now. It's not great. It was basically literally us it's like Wayne's World. Us in the basement getting shitty drunk and just talking about things. But I got to the point with it where I was like, I want to start kind of doing more of an interview-based thing. One of my tattoo artist friends, we were at the bar one night. There's a theme, if you haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
And he was like, you're really good at asking like different kinds of questions and getting people to open up. And so it was one of those things where when we did that, I was like, well, I want to do this podcast. I don't have a name. So it was just John's Entitled Podcast because I couldn't think of a good name. And it was supposed to be a placeholder name until I came up with something better, and I just never did.
Okay. And when you first did your interview, was that the first time you've ever interviewed somebody?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it started with my tattoo artist. Like, if you go back to episode 1,
I did listen to it,
it's him.
And it sounded very natural, too. It wasn't like an awkward thing or nothing, man. I mean, were you nervous at all or just very natural?
Well, I think it's the thing that we always do with podcasts or anything that we want to do creatively is we always reach out to those that maybe inspire us that are around us and more to the point that we feel familiar with. So, like, because you don't want to start out doing something and not know, especially if it's going to, like, suck anyway. You don't want to, like, waste someone else's time. But it was just a thing where, and even to, like, my wife, when she listened back to it, she's like, that person, Chris, is kind of soft-spoken and doesn't really open up like that very often. And, she was like, I'm surprised you got him to talk about these certain things. And, even he afterward was like, I've never really talked about this or that, or, like some of the stuff with like his family and his upbringing and stuff like that. He never really talked about to people.
Did you were you like, before the interview, did you prepare like hardcore? Were you like,
nope.
Just kind of winged it?
The only thing I had really prepared for him was, obviously I have a lot of tattoos and I spent a lot of time with Chris talking about a lot of different stuff while you're getting tattooed. And so something that interested me was the concept of, basically tattoo artists being like therapists. And, because of shows like Ink Master and all these kind of things, all you were seeing were people going like, here's this horrible tragedy that happened in my life and I want to commemorate it. Now let me unburden all of this shit onto you. Like, I was in an abusive relationship with my husband and I couldn't get out and, I almost died and that's what this is. And then it's like that person then has to take that and talk and keep going as they're doing their work, but then they got to go home. And it's like, how does that affect your relationship? Like, maybe you have a spouse or a significant other that's not in that industry or doesn't have to deal with those kind of serious topics.
Yeah.
And, they come home and they're like, yeah, so Becky didn't come into work and I had to close and fold her shirts for her today and cover her zone or whatever. And it's like, yeah, I had to hear about this woman getting horribly beaten for 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I gave them a piece of themselves back. And it's those kind of things I don't think, the average person maybe thinks about.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the crux of sort of, I guess, my show. Like, Dan, when we changed it to Brutally Speaking, everyone wanted to call it clickbaity, and I was like, "Fuck no, we're not doing that. No one will come on that show if that's what we call it."
Clickbaity. That's
so
that's really cool. When did you first meet Daniel Terry? He's the man.
So yeah, I've never met Dan in person.
Oh really?
No, we've never met.
Wow.
So when you guys went to Rockin' Pod,
Chris
one,
Sinzak,
I think?
yeah. No, I went to two.
You went to two? Okay, I think that was the one they went to as well.
Yeah, I get to sit with them and hang out.
So everyone went to that. I think the collection of the podcasts that we're all kind of interconnected with. And I thought about going, but I was like, I don't really know anybody. And we had kind of figured out that Toomey was kind of shopping us some of the same people. Like, hey, I got Jared Montague from Taproot, and he's got this book, and he's trying to do some other podcasts. And I was like, I live in Michigan, and Taproot's a big part of our local music scene.
He lives in North Carolina too, by the way. I think it's not
does
that
he?
far away. Yeah, North
Jared?
No, not Jared. I'm sorry, the drummer does.
Oh, I was like,
the drummer wrote the book, right?
Yeah, Jared.
Rock Stars. Yeah, Jared.
Yeah. Yep, Jared still lives in Michigan.
I'm getting that confused, man. I thought he lived in North Carolina. Maybe he doesn't.
No, he still lives in Michigan.
Does anyone in the band live in North Carolina? I'm kidding.
No, Steven still lives in Michigan, and
God,
I think everyone does.
Anyway,
as far
I'm
as
sorry.
I know. But I was doing an episode with God, I'm blanking on his name now. Adam Morgan from Hopesfall.
Okay.
And I know Dan's a big Hopesfall fan, but like I only knew Adam through Instagram, being a vinyl collector. Like I collect vinyl, and one day I was just like, oh, I'd like to have someone on to talk about vinyl. And then I realized that he had posted that like the new Hopesfall record was coming out, like a big surprise, like, hey, we're back and we're putting out a record. I was like, oh fuck, I didn't even know you were in a band, let alone this monumental band that so many people love. And I ended up hitting up Dan. I was like, hey, do you want to come and like co-host this with me? And like, you can do most of the heavy working.
Yeah.
And I'll probably piggyback off of you, but like, cause I want to talk about something different. And then maybe I'll find things in what you do that I can kind of piggyback off of. And I think we did that for like 2.5 hours. And then after that, like I had another one with Blasco the next day.
Yeah.
And then like, so it like, we just did a couple in a row. It felt better to do them with somebody else instead of me, especially doing intros and so forth. Cause who the fuck wants to hear one person talk?
Do you edit it by yourself or do you have
Oh yeah. Yep. Much to my wife's chagrin, I do spend a lot of time editing and doing all that stuff.
Was that learning? I mean, you did from day one.
Yeah, and that's why the show, like, it's funny because, like, Toomey and I have talked about this, and I don't know, your show is a little bit different in medium form, but, Toomey was kind of talking about how if he's taken some of his older episodes and taken them out because he doesn't like how it sounds, because it doesn't sound the same.
So he was saying, like, if somebody searches his name and finds episode 1, ugh.
But to me, I feel like almost like a band. I kind of approach it more like a band's first record. Like, a lot of people now, maybe the dudes in Korn hear that first record and they're like, fuck, I wish I could change the guitar tone, my vocal takes. I'm such a better musician now. I want to go back and re-record it. Or I wish I could go back and do it again. But to us fans, there's something that lives in that that's kind of special in that raw form. And to me, I want people to maybe go back to the 250 plus episodes we got and go,
right.
Oh, this show kind of was shaky. Like, there's something in the core of it that is really good.
Yeah.
But it took a little while to find its footing. And then when it did, like, oh, now this show that I like. And I'm kind of proud of that. Like,
Oh, I totally agree with that. And I love, like, when I find a great podcast, I love going all the way back and seeing where they started.
Yeah.
That's great because I feel guilty now because my very first episode I took off because I hated it so bad. It was so cringy. But that is a good point. Maybe I'll add it on there because I like you said, man, I could imagine Korn getting rid of their first album or whatever,
A lot of bands are doing that now,
it's
though.
great, though.
Re-records.
Man, I have so many. So anyway, okay, Daniel Terry has this discography discussion. I thought you were in this for some reason,
No.
but you were never a part of this.
No. he had
Was this before Brutally Speaking?
Yes. Dan had his own podcast first, and then once we kind of figured out, like, we were getting shopped like the same people, he was like, all right, like, kind of, like, checked out my show, liked it for what it is, and then when they was like, hey, like, we'd like to have co-hosts on, like, pick a band. And it is the infamous Esley dying episode that is like 4 hours long. I think I drank an entire fifth of gin during it, which is why at the very end it gets real sloppy. I start ideas and I don't finish them. I name drop some people for no reason. I don't finish explaining that story.
None of it got edited. It's just...
No, actually there was probably a good 30, 40 minutes of it edited. But it's one of those, like Dan has told me numerous times, he's like, it's one of our most downloaded episodes.
No way, I have to listen to it. I missed that one.
But I didn't understand, because I mean, like, and I think you and I probably would agree with this. Like, you can ask a bunch of different people, what is discography discussion? And someone might be like, oh, it's just a quick overlay of what, you know, a band's discography is and what it means to you. Mm-hmm. I was like, on the Esley Dying episode, I was like trying to talk about like Jacob Bannon working on the artwork and how crazy it is.
That's how it leaks into a 4-hour interview.
Well, yeah, because like I was focusing on like, oh, like, you know, from Frail Words Collapse to Shadows of Security, you know, like the guitar playing and the production and everything is so much better, and like, you know, the progression of the band and the individuals. And it was one of those things where like they're just like, yeah, this song's really cool, I like this, and you're just like, oh, okay, I'm going way too deep and way too like into nerdy. The minutia, and that's not what it is. And so it's kind of like when you're on anyone's show, like, but you gotta find the rhythm. Though. Yeah, some people do. I don't know. I mean, I love nerding out about records and bands and so forth. Like when you were doing the interview earlier talking about Vulgar Display of Power, or Far Beyond Driven, I'm sorry. Like, that was a record that, like, was my first Pantera record. No way,
that was mine.
That was my first, like, I had heard Cowboys, I had heard Far Beyond Driven, or I mean, Jesus, keep doing that. No, but the other one, but it was, like, Far Beyond Driven was the first Pantera record that when it came out, like, I went and bought it, like, at that point, and I was like, oh my God.
So you were a fan, and that was the first... Like
new record of theirs that had come out.
Okay, when I bought it, I simply bought it. I was 14 and I liked the album cover.
The original?
I was like, it's blue. No, not the original. Yeah, wasn't. Was the original ever released?
Yes, actually, you can find it now on vinyl with the original album cover. A lot of times, and especially like Barnes and Noble, you'll see a big sticker right over it. So it is still available. You can still buy it. I think I have a copy actually of the original album cover.
So okay, that's cool. You should frame it.
I mean,
that'd be good in the.
I mean, I listen to a lot of my vinyl, so like, there's only a few records I have that I want to get framed, like my Korn first record test press that Dan still has actually.
Dude, I love your taste in music because it's like mine's like goes crazy, but like Aaliyah and Tupac, all these like '90s hip hop. How'd you get into? Were you into that before metal?
Oh yeah. Well, so it's funny, like, you know, and I think, you know, obviously being married, you'll probably understand this. Like, as you learn to communicate with your spouse and you talk about your shared experiences or the things that make you who you are, and basically filling in the gaps of time that you don't have with each other. There have been things that I realized, like I'm originally from Delaware, and now, you know, the Wayne's World joke always comes up.
Do you hate that?
Yes.
Instantly, I think that, dude.
Yeah, everyone does.
We're in Delaware.
Yeah, but it's a thing where I grew up completely differently. Like, you know, I wasn't that far away from Philly. So, and like my neighbors, like we lived out in the middle of the country. Like we had Amish neighbors, and then like our neighbors worked with my dad at Kraft Foods at the time. And I remember like our neighbor, like he was, I think 5 or 6 years older than me, was always playing basketball. Like he was like in his teens. And I just remember being like, he seems so cool. I want to be like him. And so, like, that's how I got into basketball. I remember playing NBA Live 95 with him and him throwing on the first Aaliyah record. And I was like, I don't know what this is. Like, I've not heard this.
Yeah.
I am a product of the MTV generation. Like, that was the one channel that was always on in our house. And, you know, like, even back when you had, like, Matt Pinfield on, like, saying, like, you would have something like 120 minutes that would kind of give you some of the alternative stuff. You'd have Yo MTV Raps, which would kind of give you more of that. You know, Headbangers Ball, like you had such a wide array of music being presented to you. And in the early 90s, like that was kind of a really interesting, coming out of the 80s and into the 90s was an interesting time, because look at what was popular music encompassed so much that it's like, yeah, there's so many one-hit wonders, but they covered so many genres. Like that's kind of why I love the term nu metal, because nu metal covered everything from industrial to rap to anything and everything in between. And so to me, it's like, that's how I've always been, is just appreciative of music as a whole. And I think what's funny is at times doing some of these interviews, like Dan and I did one with Spencer from Periphery for his new band. And I was like, yo, I'm really getting some like early Bobby Brown vibes on this like song lyrically, like how you're like doing your vocals. And he was like, oh, like huge inspiration. And it's like, I don't know that like you can have some of these kind of conversations with people if your lane is just metal. Mm-hmm. And I have been called out on a couple of times. Like, I don't think he likes metal or hardcore, because he always is like on discography discussion being like, so I've been really listening to the TLC Crazy Sexy Cool record for the last 2 weeks. Like, I can go deep down on that with you. Like, if you ever want to do one of those, like, I'm the dude.
I would listen to that too, man. That's good.
Oh my God, I would love to do that.
I love the shirts you like rip. And you were saying, I remember one time you said, like, if you're at a concert and you'd be like, I'm the dude wearing the Aaliyah shirt, you can find me. Like,
so when we went to the Slayer farewell show, the week before, my wife and I went and saw NWA. It was just Ice Cube, MC Ren, and
that's cool.
It wasn't with Dr. Dre, but Ice-T performed before him. And so I bought this shirt. I brought it with me. I should have wore it today, but I didn't want to have like a chicken, like one of those like singlet thong things on it. But it was one of those things where I wore that to the Slayer show. And like I tweeted, I was like, most people out there wearing their like best black t-shirt that they have or buying another one. I'm out here in this like navy blue like Ice t-shirt with like, and Ice-T like retweeted it and was just like, that's what's up. Like that's cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
dude.
was one of those things where to me, it's like, it just helps me stand out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like when we went to Sonic Temple, I was wearing the first day, I think this Mariah Carey shirt I have. Mm-hmm. And again, it's a white t-shirt and has a rainbow on it. So it's like I stand out amongst most people. So when she wants to find, she's shaking her head right now.
Yeah.
So when she wants to find me, like it's easy to spot me.
Were a lot of people talking to you about it? Like, if you're owning a beer,
absolutely.
Like,
there were a lot of people that like would come to me like when I'm watching a band. They're like, "I really love your shirt," or "I took a photo of it. I hope that you're not weirded out." I'm like, "No."
Did you have to take photos of people?
No, like people. I think people just do that thing they always do, where they're kind of like we were trying to last night with Ludacris. So we were like, "Can you get a photo?"
Wait, last night I saw this. You saw Ludacris?
Yeah. So we were at this
fine establishment.
Yeah, we were at this speakeasy called the Red Telephone Booth. Is that what it's called? What was that?
Red Booth.
Red Booth. Okay. But it's a speakeasy in the traditional sense. Like there's literally a red telephone booth, like a European style one on the outside. And then, you got to use your cell phone now for like COVID reasons. But you go there and then they let you in. And we didn't know what we were getting into. Cool. And then I definitely was not dressed to go there.
Yeah.
But the guy was super cool and let us in. And then they sat us in the section. And then probably like 40 minutes later, like here comes like Ludacris. I hear his voice and I'm like, I know that voice.
You know the voice.
And then I was like trying to low key tell everybody like my wife came back from bed and was like, that's Ludacris, don't look. And then like to like my other friend, I was like, that's Ludacris, don't look. Like, cause I didn't want everyone to figure it out at some point and then do that thing where you're all like trying to talk, because he's literally like from here to there. So it's like he can see and hear us. So I'm like, just let him be. Even though I really wanted to go say something when he was done, but I just was like,
oh, you didn't meet him?
No.
Oh, okay. That's
not really
cool.
the vibe, and I didn't want to get kicked out for,
fanning out.
Yeah. But I mean, you're like, he's like royalty basically.
You love Atlanta though. You love the Braves and everything. What's your love for Atlanta? Like,
96 Braves, 95 Braves actually. Started with Deion Sanders.
Okay, yeah, Deion Sanders. Yeah.
Yep. So Deion Sanders was the reason I fell in love with Atlanta in the first place, because obviously played for the Falcons and the Braves, and it just so happened the Braves had a good team.
That's when I love the Braves. Yeah, they won the championship, right?
Yep.
95?
95.
Yeah. I remember like David Justice, all those guys.
David Justice, the great pitching rotation we had of Maddox, Smoltz, Glavine.
Wow.
Terry Pendleton, first base.
I remember him.
Like my fandom runs so deep with it at times. Like when people are like, "Oh, like remember when you had Marquise Grissom?" I was like, "Fucking hated that dude," because he came from the Indians, and the Indians and them were like rivals at the time. And I was like, so he played from that one season. I was like, I don't like him. Never liked him. It's almost like that episode or that Major League 2 with Jack Parkman when he shows up and
oh yeah, I love
and
that
he
movie.
Was like super great, and they were like, "Oh my God, we got Jack Parkman," and then he was just a dick the whole time. And then he went to the White Sox, and you're like, yeah, I still hate him. So same when he went back to the Indians, I was like, I still fucking hate you.
I think it's funny, man, that as long as I've been doing this like a few years, but this is the first time I've actually name dropped a sports like David Justice. First time we talked about sports. It was really cool.
No, the first time we came here, this is a great story. We were staying downtown, and we were trying to get an Uber to go to the Atlanta Falcons game. And if you've ever been down there for a game, like you know how just busy it gets. Like it's so hard to get people. And we're staying at this hotel, and this dude shows up in a Tattletales van, like just a Tattletales rap van. So we're like, all right, that's a strip club van. And the guy's like, trying to go to the game? We're like, sure. He goes, you got cash? We're like, sure. He's like, get in. We're like, all right. So we get in, and this dude was tweaking the fuck out.
No
like
way.
He was cranking the AC, turning it down, rolling down the windows, turning up the music, turning it down. And I'm in the front seat with him. And I'm like, dude, are you okay? And like, It was sketchy, but like we only had like a half mile to go, like to get to the stadium. So I was just like, whatever, like we're fine. And then I basically like threw money at him like a stripper and was like, okay, I gotta go by. But we got to the game slightly late. It was them playing the Panthers, which is significant because that was the game Matt Ryan and Julio Jones set the single season record for passing yards and receiving yards.
Oh, cool.
But on our way in, Ric Flair was coming out.
Oh, Ric Flair.
And I was like, holy shit, that's Ric Flair. And like, I don't smile in photos, like that ain't me. I'm cheesing like a motherfucker, like just like, and like he's like, the best part was like he comes in and I was like, Mr. Flair, can I get a photo? And he goes, absolutely, give me a second. Opens his suit, pulls out his sunglasses. He's like, all right, let's go.
No way.
Yeah, he was like just, slick Rick, man. He was like the showman. And like I remember telling my wife when I was done, I go, I don't know if his suit's so expensive because I've never felt an expensive suit that's what they feel like, but it felt cheap as shit. And then like they were like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know either. I was like, but I'm imagining Ric Flair's got money, so he got the drip, so like he's good. That's probably just what expensive suits feel like. You don't got no sweat stains on them. So it was a lot of fun, and people were just like, did you know he was gonna be there? I was like, I had no clue. I showed up like halfway through the first quarter. We had no idea he was gonna be there.
That should be on a t-shirt, like your picture of Ric Flair. That should be a logo.
Yeah, that would be very awkward.
Do you watch wrestling?
I do. Yep.
Oh, so yeah.
I don't watch WWE anymore. It's pretty much garbage.
Do you watch AEW?
I do.
Yeah,
I like it.
My guys do that.
Yeah, it's a great show, and I think like they are, in this whole thing. I think even us as podcasters, us as people, have all been trying to figure out a way to make the new norm. Mm-hmm. And I think AEW has done a great job of figuring out different ways to make wrestling, which is a very interactive live experience, work without that. They were the first really to, even when they didn't have the audience, which was just made up of their own wrestlers and the backstage people and so forth, they still put out a product where they didn't need to rely on it. They went back to the fundamentals of wrestling, and which is just tell story with what you're doing in the ring. And I think Jericho is a great example. Like he is the master of getting over the absolutely most ridiculous shit. Like arguing with the drone. There's nothing to work off of. Like that solely has to be because he makes it seem real.
Yeah.
And he does. And, everyone that's on that roster, there are a lot of them from the independent scene, like MJF and Andy from ETID, him and his partner, Pepper Parks, or Butcher and Blade as they're known. Like they've been on the independents for the last couple of years. Like, it was crazy hearing their podcast and actually hearing Andy go like, I have this gimmick. I have an idea for a new gimmick for us. And it's going to we're going to go like old school, like Butcher and Blade, like Gangs of New York style. I'm not seeing this kind of stuff because Andy's got a love for like old wrestling, and not just wrestling here in the States, but like all kinds of wrestling. And so it was cool to see the nucleus of that idea. And then you see it every week and it's getting over. And it's crazy to see that they are giving their roster the freedom to be what they want their characters to be. And it connects with the fans. And then even when they became the first to have the wrestlers in the crowd, it at least gave it that sense of normalcy where you're like, okay, like, oh, there's a cheap pop. Or in some instances where they're getting other storylines being built off of it. Like, oh, so-and-so was ringside. MJF's like taking bets of like, oh, this guy's going to lose, this person's not. Like, and then it kind of created a feud down the road, like, because they were out there betting every week. And it's like, they're taking nothing in an unprecedented time and they're making the best of it. And I think we all can learn from that. Oh,
that's so cool. Yeah, man. I wonder who writes out all these scripts. And
I mean, I know they have writers, obviously, but like, I think something that works for them that is interesting and is a concept that my wife and I argue about quite a bit is, they have like Arn and Tully, like, they have roots in the old school. Obviously, Cody with his dad being Dustin, Dusty Reynolds and all that kind of stuff. You have ties to like some of the earliest wrestling that there's ever been here in the States. And it was always about story. It was always about letting the people be who they wanted to be naturally. And as such, you also have your foot in the new where you have people just doing weird, crazy shit. Like I said, like with Matt Hardy, the broken Matt Hardy and the drones and all this kind of stuff. And it's wrestling like we've never seen. But it obviously had an impact because WWE for WrestleMania bit half of the stuff they were doing. Like the vignettes and the mini movies and stuff like that, like the pre-recorded matches. And you're not seeing that shit. Like it's easy to adopt. It's hard to come up with something new. it's easy to steal someone else's idea, but it's something, going back to finish my thought about like something my wife and I kind of argue about, is tribal knowledge. So I feel like AEW is learning from the tribal knowledge of the old wrestlers that came before, where it was about what's happening literally in the ring. Everything else is bullshit. It doesn't matter. It's about the connection of telling the story in the allotted time you have and making the best of what you have and pulling the best out of each other.
Dude, that's well said. You need to do a wrestling podcast, man.
I actually there's so many podcast ideas I have that I want to do, but I just don't want to like have my wife hate me for spending so much time in my room. Like Brandy.
Oh, yeah. So I want to talk about this. You helped me like start Teespring, right?
Teespring. Yep.
Look at this, man. You got your own socks, dude.
I mean, you have my own socks. I don't have my own socks. I always thought it was kind of tacky to have your own stuff. Socks. Yeah. Well, I mean, they're everybody's socks.
Yeah.
Have you? I guess you haven't worn them yet. Are they comfortable?
Like Red Hot Chili Peppers, you know?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you know, they wear the socks.
That's what the black circle's for, then, right?
I love this logo. Yes. Anyway, man. Yeah, I love this, man. If you want your own Brutally Speaking T-shirt, how do you find it, man? You just go on your website?
Yeah. It's weird to say I have a website. You were actually one of the first that, like, out of all of us had a website. I was like, man, Scott's ahead of the game.
I didn't want to, man. I was like, this is like...
It's weird.
Everybody tells you need one, or they told me I need one.
But do you? Like, I still don't know. There's
well,
like
when
that,
I reach out
to
people, it's easy if like, hey, you want to be on my show? And then I kind of shoot them I got my own website. My website's not good, though. It's all my videos. That's all it is.
I mean, that's the weird thing about it, though. Like, when you start kind of... This venture is as close to being in a band or whatever that I really can feel like, or a business that I can kind of really think of, because it's like you do something like this and you're like, is this tacky? Like, you have socks with my logo on it. Like, I feel like that's tacky as shit. But I'm also like, you know what? Someone might be like, fuck this, dude. I'm putting this over my dick. Like, like, I don't know. Like,
well, dude, I was trying to like, do I want the socks or the fanny pack? So I was like, let me just get the socks.
Yeah.
I mean, the site has everything. Dude.
I know. And like, you get the email updates and they got like the foil pressings and stuff. And what's weird for me is like, I worked for a screen printing company making stuff for, you know, some of the largest, companies that you'll see like in malls, like, you know, PacSun, like a lot of stuff at PacSun, a lot of stuff you're seeing now at like Target, like the Ripple Junction clothing line that does a lot of licensing through like those vintage shirts that you're starting to see all over the place. So I had kind of a knowledge on a lot of this stuff, and like there would be so many things that we would make for companies. I'm like, who is buying this? Like, made me feel very old. Like, I'd see someone like, that looks stupid. Who's buying this? And then like this brand, and you can blur it out or whatever. I don't know. DGK, like they basically exist in the world, same as like Johnny Cupcakes, in the world of parody. So I guess because it's not technically what it is. So like DGK's thing is taking a still from a popular movie.
Yeah. And
like animating it.
Oh, okay.
And then selling it for like $35 a pop. And we're like making like, you know, we've done one for like Boys in the Hood. We've done one for like Menace to Society. Like we're printing them by like the thousands every week.
Really? And
you're like, who is buying this?
There's a website that always pops up called Dumb Good. You hear that?
Did you sue them yet for the name?
I know, yeah.
That's a Gene Simmons move, man. If he stopped me anything, I want to get to the level where I can start suing people. You owe me this money now.
Sebastian Bach was at Gene Simmons' house. I don't know if you heard the story, and he was looking at like all this stuff, and he had Kiss phone cases. And Sebastian Bach was like, "Yeah, man, this is the same phone I have." And he's like, he says a whole shoebox full of them. He goes, "Hey, man, do you mind if I have one?" Gene Simmons said, "You can go on the kiss.com. He's like, you know, and he's like, "Dude, wouldn't give me one." I thought that was funny.
Can't have a mansion. You can't have a Kiss mansion, Kiss Empire, Kiss. Literally, I mean, that dude's such a prick. He tried what was the word he tried trademarking? It was really recently.
Oh, I know.
Oh, it was this, wasn't it? Wasn't he trying to trademark that?
Yes, you're right. You're right.
You're like, was that it? Consensus?
That was it. Yeah.
You're such a prick. You want to make money off of this.
Yeah, because he said Love Gun, because he's doing that on the cover.
Yeah.
But Dio was like, it was me. It was his mom came up with it.
Well, it's a form of sign language. Yeah. So it's like, it's almost like when people are like Every Time I Die is one of my favorite bands. And people are like, you can't, like I got into trouble with someone because I made a shirt for Andy and it used the I, and someone's like, well, that was my logo or my thing. And I was like, you can't copyright the old English I. Like no one can own that. That's just a font. It exists.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So like if I want to make bootleg ETID merch with the eye, as long as I don't say every time I die, I could use a photo I took, put it on a shirt, and use the eye. Don't mention the band name, but like everyone's gonna know what it is.
Yeah.
I can do that all day long.
Do you enjoy doing that, making shirts and stuff?
No. It is some of the like, it's not hard work, but it's the attention to detail. Because like imagine, so like we'll use this as an example. So like imagine this coming through. I have to look at it upside down, and I have maybe 3 to 4 seconds to try to see like, oh, this gray, there's a line, and the gray's like running out, or we got to fill the ink, or screen's breaking down, or whatever. I have 3 seconds to look at this and go, that looks right. Looks like how it's been running. Put it down a dryer. Make sure that like none of the sleeves or whatever are gonna like the ink doesn't touch anything else.
It's tedious.
Yeah.
Do you ever do it drunk? Can you drink and do this at the same time? Because this seems like it'd be hard.
I've not on the job on the clock, but I definitely have had some drinks with when we're doing like outside work when I used to do that. But it's still the attention to detail. Like my eyes probably just suffered after doing that job for like 5 years.
Yeah, it sounds pretty awful.
It's like in the middle of summer, like you got to think season. So like in summer, you're already preparing for winter. So you're doing hoodies in the middle of summer. So touching hoodies and grabbing them.
Yeah.
Standing next to a 400-degree dryer with flash units going off that are going to probably like 180, 200 degrees, just, and then you're just sitting there, and you can't usually have a fan on you really or anything because that can compromise the screens or the inks or anything, something getting into it.
Does your sweat ever just drop?
Miserable. Well, I'm not on a screen, but yeah. So that's a funny thing. So we, at one point, were doing stuff for Drake's clothing company, OVO.
Wow.
And we were doing a sample run, and I remember sweating so bad, and I was just like sweating on something, and I think like, this sounds so terrible. Like I just had such bad swamp ass, and like I just kind of was like doing one of those where you're just like pushing the shirt on your back to like just get all the sweat off you. And then like I'm touching the shirt, and then like a week later I saw Drake wearing. I was like, so indirectly Jake's probably had like my ass sweat on his like thing because I don't know if he washed them. So claim to fame, I've probably indirectly been next to Drake or on Drake, in Drake maybe, I don't know.
In Drake. I don't know how to follow that up. That's great, man. Oh, that's good. We should make the whole thing about that, Drake's. And being inside Drake. So you brought a bunch of beer here.
I did.
I brought you Deftones.
Yes.
Is that the first time you've had it?
Yes.
What do you think?
It's good. One of my other friends that's here lives out in Oregon, and they always, and I probably shouldn't say this, send me beer because I can't get this in Michigan.
Oh, you can't?
No, I can't get this in Michigan because the distribution's not there. And it is a thing where these become collector's items, really. Like even like the beer's good. When we went out to Arizona recently, I got to have the Digital Bath, I believe is the one I had, and it's so hard because you're like they kind of become these like keepsakes where you're like, well, it's cool to keep the everything as it is, like as a collector of stuff. And you're like, like we became this generation. It's like I'm gonna buy this thing and I'm never touching it.
Right?
Isn't it cool that I have this thing? And you're like, what is it? Like, I never felt so dumb when I bought a Pop Funko once of CM Punk, and I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. And my wife just goes, what does it do? And I go, nothing. And I was like, I felt so fucking stupid being like, I spent like money on this thing that does nothing. But it's cool, I have it.
It looks cool.
Yeah. So like, it's beer, it's one of those things like, having the beers, like, I have the bottles of these.
Oh, yeah. So you don't drink them? You just keep them?
Yeah, well, initially I was going to have Brock from 36 on the show, and I was going to bring him some of the Deftones beers, and we were going to drink them for the show and just kind of talk about beers and so forth. And it just never happened, so I never opened them. And they're still sitting on my shelf. And so it's like one of those things where like I have two, and the goal was always drink one, keep the other one.
Right.
But then I'm always afraid that like, what if it's like the best beer I've ever had? Yeah. And then I can't get it anymore. And then I'm just going to look at it and be like, I know how good that is, and now I want it.
But it expires though, right? After a while, so it wouldn't be as good.
I don't know. KB, like Founders does a really great job of reselling old, KBS like from years past. So, I mean, we were just at a store over in Little Five Points, and I saw like I think a KBS from last year or whatever, and it's like I know someone's gonna open it and drink it.
Yeah.
I mean, technically it's sealed. So
that's true. I love this. I've never had it before, but I love it. Blueberry lemonade.
It's so good. Like, so I'm not much for like shandies and stuff like that, but that's become one of my it's become one of my favorite breweries in Michigan, Saugatuck. They have a really good it's just like a nice, easy drinking shandy.
I like it. I really do.
It's so easy to drink. You can like,
I
and
love
that's the
it,
problem.
actually.
You drink a couple of those, and then you're just like, oh, I sneak up on. Same with White Claws.
Oh yeah,
Drink a couple of those, and
yeah. That's hardcore.
I mean, then again, I always do mine with a shot of whiskey, but
Have you?
so it may be the whiskey that gets me, not the White Claws. But I'll just blame it on the White Claws.
Dude, I appreciate bringing all these beers over here, man. I got you a beer, and you bought me a ton of beers.
Well, that's kind of the thing too. Like, you know, I've run into instances where some guests won't come on the show because we talk about drinking, even though typically, I think other than the Amigo the Devil one, where I found out he worked for a brewery and went to culinary school. So I was like, okay, like this is a dude who is so far into what makes things, like at a very basic level. That's songwriting.
Yeah.
Like, you take a couple of things, maybe some ideas, some inspirations, and you put them together, and you come up with your own thing. And so, like, I was like, that's my hook. That's how I'm going to talk to him and bring beer and bring a bunch of other stuff into it and do an interview I haven't heard him do yet. And, like, I mean, you could hear it. Like, we just opened a beer, and I think we were doing it, like, on, I don't know, like 10 or 11 on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, what are you drinking? I was like, oh, I'm drinking. He's like, give me a second. I'm going to go get one. And I was like, all right. And then, like, when we met a couple of times, like, he brought some new Glarus stuff, like him and his lady. And that was the first time I ever had that. And now, like, my wife and I have been like, we got to go. We got to go get that beer.
Yeah.
It's so good. And I think that's kind of the fun thing is, you know, going around and traveling and trying different, you know, cocktails, trying different beers and so forth. Like, you kind of get to get a little bit, literally, local flavor. So to me, like, in my traveling, I think Michigan's got some of the best beer. I think it is expansive. Like, you know, this Founders beer, this Black is Beautiful. I know label's out. Is one of those things where a bunch of breweries are basically doing a collaboration series, and Founders is doing one. Mark from Nothing More sending me one from the Texas version.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's kind of cool to get something like that where like you see a bunch of people kind of going like, this is something we're all doing. It's different, and everyone has a unique take on it. But it's under the umbrella of the same thing. And I think that's kind of cool. You know, the Kalamazoo Stout, the whole reason I brought that is that's where I grew up. Like, once I moved out from the East Coast to Michigan, I lived in Kalamazoo, so it's literally a little flavor of my hometown. And Bell's is one of the, you know, I guess becoming one of the biggest breweries here in the States, behind Founders, really. This one is just, I mean, some people feel really weird about peanut butter in their beer.
Do you like it?
That is one of my favorite beers. Like, a lot of these are my favorite beers. Like, this one I like because, like, blood orange, honey, like, sounds weird. Blood orange usually in beer doesn't really come through. But this one, like, has a really good blood orange flavor. The honey and the wheat and the, you know, the honey ale and all that kind of stuff, it works so well. It's a brewery that a lot of people aren't going to know. It's kind of like up north, something different. And that's kind of my thing that I keep coming back to with Michigan beers is, like, you know, I've been out to Seattle, I've been out to Washington, I've been, you know, down south, East Coast. And, like, you know, sometimes you go to these places and you're like, yep. That's a stout. That's an IPA. That's a porter. But you didn't do anything. You just made one.
Yeah.
To me, it's like the real goal and the trick is do something with it.
Yeah.
Make it different. Make it unique. Make it your own. And that's what all of these are.
Yeah,
like,
these definitely are, man.
This is one we went to a beer festival and they were doing samples and I was like, an oatmeal cream pie. I was like, what is that going to be like? And we tried it. It was super good. We went to the brewery. It's like an hour away from us. And the head brewmaster was like, yeah, so we put, and I might have the number wrong, but I swear he said like something like 50 pounds of marshmallow fluff in this. And you're like, wow, okay, like never would have thought of that. We had a brewery that went under, but they used to do a bubblegum IPA and they put like 100 pounds of double bubble into the beer. And it's like, you know, like that's what gets me excited. Like do something different.
Yeah, man.
And then have a fun story to tell about it. Like, yeah, I tried this, and the first one, holy shit, that was so gross, that did not work. So what we had to do is we went away from, you know, gum balls, and we went to double bubble, or, you know, things like that. Like, do something kind of different and make it unique, because there's a story to tell, and then keep adding to the lineage of the story of the breweries and so forth.
Good Lord, man, that's so cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Cool, man. And so, what else? Is that it?
I don't know. It's your show.
Yeah, I know, man. I keep thinking about you talking about Swamp Fest. I'm trying to talk all that, dude.
I mean, you live out here. You know that that's
humidity,
really like the
man,
humidity will get you.
We were all thinking it when I was saying the sweat. You know, yeah. But anyway, man, I love your show. Really speaking, it's great, man. Thank you for coming here on the show. It's nice meeting you and your wife and your friends.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We gotta definitely hang out. And man, I love all these beers. I can't wait to drink this peanut butter though and the oatmeal. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's those are two of my favorites. I can speak to that one. I have had that one. I was gonna say I don't think I've had that one yet, but I went and had it on draft. It is okay. The flavor that it said it has, and I mean that's kind of always the fun thing too, because like, you know, like something Mark and I always go back and forth on is, you know, like peanut butter.
Yeah.
What do you think of when you hear peanut butter?
Jelly.
Okay, so that's the funny thing though. Like there's another brewery in town that makes a peanut butter and jelly, PB and Jelly. It's from Brewing. Excuse me. And it's one of those things where I like it, but it's the way that some of these beers are sold. You're like, okay, like I have an idea, peanut butter. Okay, I'm thinking, you know, like some people might like crunchy peanut butter. Yeah. It has a different flavor than smooth peanut butter.
Yeah.
Or peanut butter and chocolate.
Dude,
but like,
this could be like a Netflix, like this could be a show on this, you know?
I mean, that's why, like, you know, like a channel like Vice exists, you know, like the high cooking or the, you know, cooking with beers or any of that kind of stuff. So it's just endless. And I think we're in a really interesting space with the idea of all this. And, you know, something we've even tried pushing on the show badly on our end, but is, you know, the idea of other craft things, craft cocktails, craft, you know, you're seeing loose leaf teas like all over the place now booming. You know, coffees. Coffee is expanding so much now.
Oh, yeah.
And so the idea really is just like, I like the idea of sitting down with whatever the preferred beverage is and just having a conversation, because I feel like in this day and age, like you and I have just been talking for however long we've been talking and don't have a phones. We haven't looked at a phone. Most of the people around us right now are on their phones.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're missing that. We're missing going back to just basic communication and understanding how to have a conversation with people. I think right now, as a whole in the country, there's a lot of problems that stem just from that basic fundamental concept.
God, man. Well said, brother. Thank you for being on the show, man. This is awesome, dude. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers, man. Look.
Double fisting. You're making me jealous. I got to get the White Claw now.
Yeah, slam that peanut butter.